Hi, I'm Robert. I'm here to talk about sex education in public schools. My opponent claims that educating children in public schools is the most effective way to prevent negative consequences related to sex. However, the claims supporting the statement are incomplete and irrelevant. I will show this to be the case. Firstly, she states that it is a myth that exposure to sex in media will lead to kids to be more sexually active. Second, she claims that educating young children will prevent negative consequences later in life. In her third claim, she states that sex education will lead to sexual freedom. Finally, she states that sex ed will enable young people to protect themselves from the consequences of sex. First, she cites an ABC News article stating that it's a myth that kids who are exposed to sex in media will be more sexually active. However, I could not find this ABC News article, and it does not. And in her speech, she does not show that ABC News did any research or studies to back this claim. She's appealing to the authority of ABC News. She then goes on to bring up sources of sexual content and ways to hide it from kids, and I'm not sure how this is relevant at all to the point that it's a myth. And even if what she claims is true, that sex in media is related to kids being more sexually active, it has nothing to do with sex education. Therefore, it doesn't matter if this claim is true. Her second point is that children who are educated when young retain some information, that educating when young is most effective at preventing negative consequences later. She doesn't cite any sources for this claim, and even if it's true, it's unlikely that her third point is that growing up in sex ed gives kids sexual freedom and reduces the chances of them being bullied and makes them more comfortable. However, if we don't tell kids about sex and we don't allow them to talk about it, they will be unable to use this as a source of bullying. They won't know that it's an effective way to bully people, and bullying is going to happen regardless of what the topic is, because kids are kids. And her fourth point is that exposure will allow them to protect themselves from negative consequences. If kids are told about the negative consequences of sex, it will rather than telling them how to have sex, we should tell them not to have sex. You don't need to educate them about consequences because it will prevent them from having sex. Therefore, her claims supporting this, her point about sex education are unbacked by sources and facts and irrelevant to her later points.
All right, the structural issues are fine. You do label the main claim and the secondary claims. I think you're rushing a little bit in the preview, trying to get to the ideas there, and you drop your voice when you're doing the rushing at the beginning also, which makes it a little bit hard to get used to the cadence of the presentation. You settle down a bit once you get to the main points. The challenge on the ABC studies, okay, it's a little thin, but it's a reasonable press to be making at that point, but you have no counter evidence, no counter studies to suggest a different conclusion. You don't explain why this conclusion is illegitimate, except that it's dependent upon the authority of the ABC group. and you don't give us any reason to doubt that authority except that you couldn't find the study. So that may simply be a research error on your part. I don't know how hard you worked at it. If she's got a URL address and you can't find the study, I'm wondering. Now, if there is no URL address, that's one of those other issues that you ought to point out. What did you do in effort to find that study? Because the implication that you're making is that there isn't any such study. And that, I think, needs a lot more development than what you presented here. As you get to the second point, your labeling was pretty clear. You challenged the lack of evidence on that. I think that's a reasonable challenge to make here. You seem to get a little bit lost in the argument at that point, and then you just kind of skipped on to the issue of bullying. I'm not sure how the issue of bullying is connected to this topic at all. You don't really clarify it much, and in fact, you kind of suggest that there's this counter way that it could be used in the opposite direction, but neither the advocate's use of this claim or your use of the claim is particularly clear, at least not in this argument. On the fourth point, again, you have a good clear label, so it's easy to follow. You've got a contradictory claim, but no proof for that claim. Everything in your argument could have been said immediately after the presentation of the advocate's claims. There's no additional research on your part. The analysis of the reasoning is okay, but they're mostly just presses. The same thing with the analysis of the evidence. They're just presses on a couple of points without really developing arguments on those points. So this is kind of a defensive refutation, that the kind of thing that you would do if you were getting up in a debate and having to respond to a point and you didn't have much chance to think about it, but you had to give some kind of answer. Well, that's what you'd give at this point. I think it's a little underdeveloped given the amount of time that you had, and so it needed to be a little thicker to be convincing. All right, thank you.